everybody. Welcome into Folklore and Flourish. You're here with Jane. Sorry that the camera's so wobbly. The dog decided it wanted to mess around with the table, I guess. But welcome into Folklore and Flourish. It's June 11th. It's June 11th. We are in week 2 of our Heroes in Quest month with our Pathfinder. We are in week 2 of the Ordeal. Yesterday we saw the dragon, but today is all about the Ascent. Today is all about that upward climb. The theme is climactic tests, and our lesson is that hard paths change you. Today is heavily about the journey, the climb itself. There are a lot of tall mountain peaks all over the world, and it's not necessarily conquering the biggest or the most dangerous. It's just the mountains themselves, what they represent. And so we are looking at the Ascent today with our Pathfinder. We're going to see that through Tibetan, Greek, Incan, and Romanian folklore today. So we get to go all around the world, all around those different mountains and stuff. Today's question is, what hill defines me? So what ascent, what climb really defined you? What hill is it that you want to overcome? And then today we're going to stand tall with our feet planted firmly. Today we are going to stand tall with our feet planted firmly, not fanted. We're going to have our feet planted firmly, and we're going to lift our gaze and hold our posture with intention. So we're going to, if you do yoga and stuff, full sun salutations are always great. I tend to do that and those cycles a lot more on days that I'm feeling more down or like days that I know I need more energy. But it's honestly just a good practice to stand tall and to really feel your body fully embrace and accept the sun, the light. Even when it's dark outside, there's so much light. Like, I know that that sounds kind of silly and ridiculous. And when it's a new moon, it's not necessarily as bright, but it tends to be in that darkness that we can see some sort of light. But today you're going to stand tall with your feet planted. Do it at middle of the day or in the middle of the night, whatever you want to do. And really lift your gaze, lift your shoulders, just really feel your posture. And then we're going to recognize the challenge that has shaped us most and stand within its meaning today. So, with all of that in mind, I got animals going crazy. Roxy's back for more pets. She saw me sit down and this was her ascent, was jumping on my lap to get pets. It doesn't matter, that was her hill to climb today. So regardless of what your hill is, you got it. And I'm going to go deal with all these pets that need love and attention, even though I just gave them breakfast. And I hope you guys have a great day. We are in week 2 of the Ordeal, and we're almost through it. So keep on going, and I will see you guys tomorrow. But enjoy today, June 11th. See ya. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to honor the cultures behind the stories we are about to explore. The tales shared here come from many peoples, lands, and traditions. I do not change these stories to fit modern expectations or to align with today's social standards. Instead, I present them as they were told, sometimes beautiful, sometimes harsh, sometimes challenging. We are not here to judge the past, but to understand it, to listen, to learn, and to honor the ancestors who carried these stories forward. We also share stories from various religious traditions. These are presented in their historical and spiritual context, with respect for their beliefs that they represent. Every culture deserves respect, context, and acknowledgement, and this space is dedicated to doing exactly that. Story 1. King Gesar and the Mountain of Iron Winds. Across the vast grasslands of Tibet, where herds moved like drifting clouds beneath an endless sky and snow-crowned mountains guarded the horizon, there stood a peak known among travelers as the Mountain of Iron Winds. Its summit pierced the heavens, and storms gathered around it even when the surrounding valleys rested beneath clear blue skies. The people of the region believed powerful spirits dwelled upon its heights, and few dared climb beyond its lower slopes. Those who attempted the ascent often returned exhausted and humbled, speaking of fierce winds, treacherous paths, and strange voices carried through the mist. During the time of King Gesar of Ling, stories spread that a malevolent force had taken refuge upon the mountain. Shepherds reported seeing dark shadows moving among the cliffs, while caravans avoided the passes for fear of disappearing without a trace. The mountain had become a place of dread, a barrier that divided villages and filled the hearts of ordinary people with uncertainty. When these reports reached Gesar, he listened carefully to the fears of his people. He understood that dangers left unchallenged often grow larger in the imagination than they are in reality. Yet he also knew that some threats must be faced directly. Determined to learn the truth, he prepared for the journey himself. The climb began in green alpine meadows where wildflowers swayed in the wind and streams flowed from distant glaciers. As Gesar ascended, the landscape gradually changed. The grass disappeared, trees became scarce. Jagged rocks and steep cliffs replaced the gentler slopes below. The air grew thinner with every step, and the mountain demanded more from him than strength alone. Bitter winds lashed against the clothing. The loose stones shifted beneath his feet. More than once he was forced to stop and regain his footing as clouds rolled across the mountainside, reducing the world to a blur of gray mist. Yet each challenge revealed something important. The higher he climbed, the less he relied upon confidence, and the more he relied upon patience, discipline, and determination. Near the summit, the mountain presented its greatest test. Storm clouds gathered overhead, and strange echoes filled the air. Every fear and doubt that had ever touched Gesar seemed to return at once, carried upon the howling wind. The climb became a struggle not only against the mountain itself, but against the temptation to turn back. The summit remained hidden above him, invisible beyond the clouds, and there was no guarantee that success waited ahead. Yet Gesar continued upward because he understood that meaningful journeys rarely reveal their reward before the final steps are taken. When he finally reached the summit, the storm began to break. Sunlight pierced the clouds, illuminating valleys, rivers, and distant mountains stretching far beyond sight. The danger that had frightened so many people was overcome, but the greater victory lay elsewhere. The ascent had transformed the climber himself. The man who stood upon the summit possessed a deeper understanding than the one who had begun the journey below. For generations afterward, storytellers remembered the tale as a reminder that difficult paths often reveal strengths we never knew we possessed, and that the steepest mountains frequently become our greatest teachers. Story 2. Bellerophon and the Road Toward Olympus. In ancient Greece, mountains rose abruptly from fertile plains and shining coastlines, their peaks often hidden among clouds that drifted across the sky. To those who lived beneath them, these heights seemed to stand between the mortal world and the realm of the gods. Among all mountains, none inspired greater awe than Olympus, the sacred home of the Olympian deities. Its summit remained distant and mysterious, a place beyond ordinary human reach. Travelers could gaze upon it from afar, but few imagined ascending towards such heights. Bellerophon was not an ordinary traveler. Renowned throughout Greece for his bravery and skill, he had already accomplished feats that many considered impossible. Riding the winged horse Pegasus, he had defeated the Chimera, a monstrous creature whose lion head, goat's body, and serpent's tail had terrorized the land. He had overcome enemies, survived dangerous quests, and earned a reputation that spread far beyond his homeland. Yet with every victory came a growing belief that no challenge stood beyond his reach. Success, which had once strengthened his confidence, gradually began to cloud his judgment. As years passed, Bellerophon turned his gaze toward Olympus itself. From the valleys below, he could see its distant heights gleaming above the clouds. The mountain seemed less like a destination and more like a final test. If he had conquered monsters and completed every task set before him, why should he not continue higher? Why should he not attempt the ascent toward the very realm of the gods? The idea took root in his mind and grew stronger with time, until it seemed impossible to ignore. One morning, he mounted Pegasus and began his journey skyward. At first, the ascent felt magnificent. Forests, rivers, and villages shrank beneath him. Mountains that once appeared enormous became small features within a much larger landscape. The world unfolded below like a painted map. Yet, as he climbed higher, the journey changed. The air became colder, the silence deepened. The farther he traveled from the earth, the more distant and fragile human concerns seemed. The ascent no longer felt like a triumph. Instead, it became an encounter with the limits of mortal understanding. Greek storytellers remembered this part of the tale because it revealed a truth larger than the hero himself. Difficult paths do not always test physical strength. Sometimes they test wisdom. The higher Bellerophon rose the more he confronted questions about ambition, humility, and the desire to possess what was never meant to belong to him. The mountain served as a mirror, reflecting not his accomplishments, but the motivations behind them. In the traditional story, Bellerophon's attempt to reach Olympus ultimately failed, yet the failure itself became the lesson. The climb changed him because it revealed the difference between greatness and pride. For generations, the tale endured as a reminder that every ascent transforms a traveler. Some mountains strengthen the body, others strengthen the spirit. The most important journeys often do both, teaching that true wisdom lies not merely in reaching great heights, but in understanding why we seek them in the first place. Story 3: The Mountain Heroes of the Andes. High above the fertile valleys of the Andes, where condors rode the currents of the sky and glaciers gleamed beneath the sun, the mountains were regarded as living powers. The Incan called these sacred peaks apus, mighty spirits who watched over the people, governing the weather and guarding the balance between the human world and the realm of the divine. Villages nestled in their shadows offered prayers and gifts to them, believing that every mountain possessed its own presence, wisdom, and strength. To climb one of these peaks was not merely a physical challenge, it was an encounter with something ancient and sacred. Among the many stories told throughout the Andes was that of a young messenger chosen to carry an urgent offering to a shrine high upon the remote summit. A season of hardship had settled across the region. Frost had damaged crops, storms had disrupted trade routes, and uncertainty weighed heavily upon the villages below. The elders believed an offering must be carried to the mountain shrine so that harmony could be restored between the people and the sacred forces that watched over the land. The task required someone capable of enduring difficult journeys, and the responsibility fell to the young messenger. The ascent began before dawn. Wrapped against the cold, he followed narrow trails winding through fields of terraced stone and across rivers fed by glacial meltwater. Llamas grazed upon distant slopes, and the air carried the scent of mountain grass and earth. As the trail climbed higher, the world below slowly transformed. Villages became tiny clusters of stone. Fields merged into patches of color scattered across the landscape. Every step carried him farther from the familiar comforts of daily life and deeper into a realm ruled by wind, rock, and sky. The higher he climbed, the more demanding the journey became. Thin air made breathing difficult. Loose stones shifted beneath his feet. Sudden storms swept across the mountainside with little warning, covering the trail in mist and forcing him to move carefully along steep ridges. More than once he questioned whether he could continue. The summit remained distant, often hidden among clouds, and there were moments when the path seemed endless. Yet each obstacle revealed something unexpected. It was teaching him resilience. The mountain demanded effort, but it also stripped away distraction, leaving only determination and purpose. When he finally reached a shrine near the summit, the clouds parted and sunlight spread across the Andes in every direction. Snow-covered peaks stretched toward the horizon like waves frozen in stone. Standing there, he understood why the mountains were considered sacred. Their greatness was not measured by height alone, but by their ability to transform those who climbed them. The offering was placed at the shrine, and the messenger began his descent. Though he returned to the same villages and fields he had left behind, he was no longer the same person. The mountain had tested him, strengthened him, and revealed capacities he had never known he possessed. For generations afterwards, stories like his reminded the people that hard paths shape those who walk them, and that the greatest summits often change us long before we reach the top. Story 4: Iovan Iorgovan in the Stone Mountain. In the rugged lands of southwestern Romania, where forests cloak the mountains and rivers carve deep passages through stone, stories are still told of Iovan Iorgovan, a heroic figure whose strength and courage became legendary among his people. His name echoes through folklore much as the names of great champions echo through other cultures, yet the landscape of his adventures are unmistakably Romanian. The mountains, caves, and valleys of the Carpathian world are not merely settings within the stories. They are living participants in the trials that shape the hero's destiny. One tale tells of a time when a monstrous creature terrorized the region surrounding a towering mountain of stone. Travelers vanished along its slopes. Shepherds abandoned pastures that had sustained their families for generations. The creature's presence cast a shadow across the land, and many believed the mountain itself had become cursed. Villages grew fearful, Roads, once filled with merchants and wanderers, became silent. Though many spoke of confronting the threat, none dared attempt the climb. When news reached Iovan Iorgovan, he resolved to face the danger. Armed with little more than his courage and determination, he journeyed toward the mountain. The road carried him through dense forests where sunlight filtered through leaves in shifting patterns, and streams rushed over ancient stones. As he traveled, he heard countless stories about the creature waiting alone. Each telling seemed to make the monster larger and more terrifying. Yet Iorgovan understood that fear often grows strongest when fed by distance and imagination. The mountain itself proved a formidable challenge. Steep cliffs rose above narrow trails, and jagged rocks forced him to choose each step carefully. Rain swept across the slopes, turning paths slick and dangerous. At times, the climb demanded that he pull himself upward using roots and outcrops, while winds howled across the heights. Every obstacle seemed designed to convince him that turning back would be the wiser choice. Yet with each hardship he overcame, his confidence deepened. The mountain was not merely testing his strength, it was shaping it. Near the summit, he finally encountered the creature that inspired so much fear. Different versions of the legend described it differently, some portraying a dragon, others a monstrous beast of enormous size. What remains consistent is the challenge itself. The battle was fierce and exhausting, fought among stone cliffs high above the valleys below. When victory finally came, it was celebrated throughout the region. The roads reopened, shepherds returned to their flocks, life resumed where fear had once ruled. Yet the people remembered more than the defeat of a monster. They remembered the climb. The mountain had changed the hero long before the battle began. Every difficult step had prepared him for the challenge waiting above. For this reason, the tale endured across generations. It reminded listeners that the hardest roads often lead to the most meaningful victories, and that the obstacles standing before us today may become the very things that forge our strength tomorrow. Daily Thread for June 11th, The Ascent. Every journey eventually reaches a place where the road begins to climb. The path grows steeper, the air thinner, and the destination less certain with every step. King Gesar found such a path upon a mountain wrapped in storm and shadow, where the challenge before him tested not only his body but also his spirit. Bellerophon discovered that some ascents revealed truths about the traveler as much as the destination, teaching that wisdom must rise alongside ambition. High in the Andes, a young messenger carried an offering toward a sacred summit and learned that endurance is often forged one difficult step at a time. Iovan Iorgovan climbed toward danger hidden among stone cliffs and mountain winds, finding that courage grows strongest when the way forward appears most difficult. Though these stories come from distant lands and different traditions, they share a common understanding. Mountains are rarely important because of what stands at their peaks. They matter because of what happens during the climb. The ascent strips away comfort, impatience, and certainty. It asks for perseverance when the summit remains hidden beyond clouds, and effort seems greater than reward. Yet it is precisely within those moments that transformation begins. The traveler who reaches the top carries more than a satisfaction of arrival. They carry the strength earned from struggle, the wisdom gained through perseverance, and the quiet realization that every difficult path leaves us changed. The mountains may appear to stand before us as an obstacle, but the oldest stories remind us that it is often a teacher in disguise, inviting us upward toward a version of ourselves that can only be found through the climb.